Oh, welcome back. Module 4, Chapter 4, Plans for Safety and Health. Good idea, right? Now, I have the faintest idea what this stuff is behind me. It looks like somebody dropped a bunch of frozen paper clips. I'm not sure. If you figure it out, let me know. In the meantime, let's get on with it here. Okay. Don't know why it says regulatory basis, but that's not important because it does say plans for safety and health. That's what this is. All right. Plans for safety and health. Always a good idea. Anyhow, this is requirements. Components of, we're going to talk about the components of a health and safety plan, HASP, clever people with initializers. The components of an emergency response plan, ERP, hey, left that out. The components of a medical program, various OSHA compliance programs needed on a hazardous waste site. About a lot of components, a lot of law stuff, legal stuff. OSHA requires each employer to develop and implement a written site-specific safety and health program that identifies, evaluates, and controls safety and health hazards, and provides emergency response procedures for each hazardous waste site. Now, why do you think they want us to do that? Don't you think it's a good idea to know what the hazards are facing you ahead of time so you can provide for them? Emergency response procedures. You have to know what's going on before you can do something about it, right? So the written safety and health program must include organizational structure, and that was chapter 3, ICS, talked about that. And also if you're doing your due diligence on your FEMA stuff, you know that one whole thing of it is your incident command system. Comprehensive work plan, site-specific health and safety plan, there's that ask again, medical surveillance program, and standard operating procedures. Written safety and health program must be developed before work begins on site and implemented as work proceeds. So it makes sense. You have a plan ahead of time, by all means, and you work the plan, but things change. So you need to be implemented as work proceeds, and you need to make changes to it as necessary too. HASP elements, hazard analysis for each site, employee training, you get a hazard analysis. Come back to that for a second. Obviously, if you don't know what the hazards are, how can you prepare for them? If you don't know what gases you might find there, what PPE, you're not going to know what PPE you need. So there's a lot of things. This planning is really important. Employee training, people don't know how to use their respiratory equipment. It's not much good to them. One time in Moldova plant, they didn't, before I got there, they didn't have a program on this. They were kind of trying to do it. They had SCBAs with level A suits, and there was a ammonia release, and a guy trying to help threw on an fully clad level A suit, which is fully encapsulated level A suit, and proceeded to and try to enter there and do something about it. However, he wasn't trained. He didn't know that to put that suit on, you got to have a self-contained breathing apparatus under it. Now, you're not going to live very long. There's only a couple of minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes of oxygen in that suit. So they stopped him before he got in there. But that's what happens if people aren't trained. They're not going to know. They could hurt themselves. PPE to be used by employees based on the hazard analysis. Medical surveillance. In other words, these jobs are demanding. They're physically demanding. So to make sure that people are medically capable of doing it without damage to themselves or harming somebody else, maybe, or being a problem in and of themselves. Exposure monitoring, site control measures, decontamination procedures. You go into that nasty stuff when you come out, well, you got to get decontaminated. Emergency response plan. Okay, what do we do if somebody kills over? What do we do if somebody gets hurt? What if there's a fire? You have to take all these things into consideration. Confined space entry procedures and spill containment. Emergency action plan should have a method for reporting fires and emergencies, evacuation policies and procedures, of course, escape plans, route assignments, safer refuge areas, even on a hazardous waste site. You need to do this. The site can be huge. It could be a very large site, and you need to, okay, no, don't go that way because you're going to run into a creek or whatever. And you need to make sure that people know how to get out of this. If there's something happens, something erupts in here, or something escapes that you didn't plan on, people need to know how to get out. Even though you're outside or probably outside, you still need to know that. names, titles, phone numbers, who can be contacted for more information or for more information on their responsibilities on the plan. In other words, if you're not sure about what your responsibilities are, who can I contact? That's got to be in the plan. Procedures for employees who remain to shut down critical plant operations, use fire extinguishers or other essential services, rescue and medical duties for designated workers, assembly location and procedures to account for all employees. Now, does all this sound a little bit familiar? Yeah, because this is basically the what you need in Accord OSHA 1938. You need to have emergency action plans. This is the basic emergency action plan stuff. I'm not pushing the envelope here. Training on the emergency action plan at least annually when they're hired, of course, when the job changes and when the plan changes. Again, this is basic stuff. Medical surveillance program. All exposed to hazardous substances at or above the PEL's, permissible exposure limits, for 30 days or more. All who wear a respirator for 30 days or more. Anybody who is injured or ill or develops signs or symptoms of exposure, members of the Haz Mat team, all come in the medical surveillance program. And there's a lot of other programs too. PPE, which we'll talk about in chapter 10. Respiratory equipment program, proper use, type, maintenance, inspection, fit testing, pulmonary function. When you have a respiratory equipment program, it's a program that needs a lot of work. It's decontamination procedures, usually standard operating procedures for that. Spill prevention and control countermeasures. Confined space entry. If permanent required confined space is present and entry will be made by employees, that's a decision that needs to be made early on, because confined space entry, if it's a permanent required confined space, isn't something that can be done on a dime. It's a lot to it. So 1910.146. Bloodborne pathogens, very important, mostly for the people that are going to be dealing with it. It depends on the situation. Lockout tagout could have to be implemented. In that case, you have to have training on that too. Hearing conservation, again, something you got to do. It's a work site. Fall prevention. And that's it for this chapter. There wasn't too much to this chapter. I mean, there's a lot to the chapter, but to stick in a PowerPoint, not a lot. So go over that chapter. Remember, all the questions are coming from the chapter. And if you figure out what that stuff is behind me, let me know, okay? Other than that, let's move on.